episode. So this episode is actually named "In About 6 Hours, I Lose My Virginity to a Fish."
You're too good for me.
And then he comes back.
And then he comes back. He's like, I gotta fly you home.
The part with Darkwing's sidekick in the, what's it called, Midnight City, I think.
Dude, that part was sick. Talking about it has definitely made me like the episode more. But while I'm watching it, I definitely felt like I'm just excited to get to the good part. You know, I want to see something brutal again. Welcome to Backseat Directing,
Where we talk about movies, TV shows, comics, and more.
We're your hosts,
Andrew
and Aaron.
We put out new episodes every Monday and every Thursday.
And on this episode, we're doing a review on Invincible Season 2, Episode 2.
3, 2, 1, action.
Before we dive into one of our favorite shows of all time, we're going to ask if everyone watching could hit that subscribe button for us, because it's going to help the channel out a bunch. And we don't want you to miss any of our content either. So hit that bell so you're notified. Again, post new episodes twice a week. So make sure you're staying up to date. Andrew, Invincible. We've been waiting for this forever. We watched the first episode last week. The second episode just came out. What did you think?
I thought that this episode was not quite as strong as the first episode, but there were so many good peak moments in this episode, especially to see like jumping off the page from the comic to real life. Like, oh, by the way, we're going to spoil the episode, so hopefully you've seen the episode by now. So like the part with Aquarius's people in Atlantis, the part with Darkwing's sidekick in the, what's it called, Midnight City, I think.
Dude, that part was sick.
That was like the best part of the episode.
I agree.
But just seeing those things jump off the page to life, dude, I feel like a kid in a candy store. I'm so excited.
This episode was like that meme of Leo where it's like, you know?
Yeah, it's from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yeah, because literally like,
that was so good.
thank you.
I can't do that fast enough.
I'm not going to even try to do it again. But like literally every like 10 minutes, there was a new part from the comics and you're like, oh, I've read that.
Yeah.
You know, and they hit on a lot, like 4 or 5 different little story side quests that we saw in the comics. Like this episode kind of felt like, I don't want to say a filler episode, but kind of just get the story in there, you know, kind of develop like what Mark is working on, kind of develop the distraught that his mom is going through, you know, and like the impact of the last season's finale where Omniman kicked his ass and then flew away from Earth, which is really cool that last season had such a heavy impact on this season. There was consequences, and we're seeing them play out in this season. I feel like in shows, it's very easy to just be like, all right, this is a new story for season 2, you know? And like, they barely reference the first season's events. Not here.
Season 1, Robin dying, Huey never talking about her again.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. But yeah, what did you think? What stories were talked on? How do you think they translated it from the comics to the screen? Did you wish they elaborated on any particular part more, that we got to see more in the comics, or maybe they took too long on a certain spot that you didn't like? I
think that, and people might forget this about season 1, but I think season 1 had some, and I also wouldn't call it a filler episode. I think season 1, I think they're more like character building episodes. Mm-hmm. It's building side plots, which is developing other characters, but also like it's character building for Mark. Like I thought this episode was really well executed from comics to screen, because the first thing in my mind that I remember after Nolan leaving the planet in the comics, and this could be not the perfect order, but the first big event that I remember is him going to Atlantis, like in this episode. So this episode is actually named "In About 6 Hours, I Lose My Virginity to a Fish." But I
didn't realize that was the title. That's so funny. People that haven't read the comics are probably like, "What's
he talking about?" Yeah, but But that's the first big. The end of this episode is the first big event that I remember after Omni-Man leaving when reading the comics. So like, I think it's really cool that they fit it in there. They had a matriarch leading the society, which was cool, interesting. She had abandoned the old customs, but also it's character building. The Mark fighting this like Kraken. I don't remember if they call it something else, but
I don't remember her name, but sounds right.
When he's fighting it, Cecil tells him just to abandon ship and let the Atlanteans, the cards fall for them where they may. But this is setting up a lot in the future of the story. Without saying too much for people who haven't read the comics, it's setting up a lot in the future of the dynamic between Mark and Cecil. Because Mark has been obedient to Cecil from the first episode because he wants to prove he's not like his father. But Mark also is...
He's tried to prove to himself that he's not his father either.
His mom has a great line in the first season that I've always loved where she says, I know it's never, all I know is it's never wrong to try to help somebody, something to that effect when you're trying to help Titan. And so he disobeys Cecil here and goes back to help the Atlanteans, even though they were just trying to kill him. So it shows a lot about Mark's character, shows a lot about how far he's going to be pushed by Cecil, you know, how far he's willing to take it because he can only take instruction so much. Like his dad, he has that innate, you know, sense of control in him where it's like, he's not really a lapdog, just like his dad. Like Cecil could never control Omni-Man. That's why Cecil
Omni-Man was pretending to be a hero.
Yeah.
You know, like he had a different goal in mind. You know, he was just putting on this facade.
But even in pretending, he couldn't pretend to be subservient to anyone, including Cecil. So,
but like in contrast to that, Mark he has a connection to these people or creatures that he's seen get hurt.
Yeah, and he shares a home with them. He values Earth. He's technically half human, even if the Viltrumite DNA is so pure that he's 99.9% Viltrumite.
Right.
Viltrumite. He considers himself half human. His mom is a human. So I think that there's a lot of good character building, and the character building in the segment we got with Darkwing is so cool. I'll just call him Darkwing, even though he was his sidekick. I think he said he was like Night Boy or something.
Yeah,
but he
goes by
Darkwing now.
Yeah, that's what he goes by.
So they go into, to clarify, he goes into Midnight City, which the Midnight Magician cast a curse on this city to turn it into like infinite darkness and midnight. So now it's like this like downtrodden.
Which I'm going to state the obvious. Yeah, this is obviously Invincible's version of Batman.
Darkwing is Batman. Midnight City is Gotham City. Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
But we get so much cool use of color there, where he's splitting
or lack thereof.
Yes, but before that though, when he's splitting in between the Midnight City and like the rest of the world, you can see where like the color is kind of the hues all turn like red and black and these like darker, you know, red tones, orange tones, and then he like goes back into the world where the sky's
at first blue. It was kind of jarring, but then they like showed Mark being like impressed and amazed by it, like he's still a teenager. No, he's like, whoa, this is cool. Cecil, are you seeing this?
They keep that childlike wonder, which is so great. Even when it comes to him like hanging out with his friends or chatting with his friends, like he's going and getting he sees other people going to get a burger with their friends at one point in the episode, and it's like, oh, like that's what everyone else is doing right now, enjoying their summer vacation, living a normal life, but this is my life. And I think it's cool. He still revels in moments in being a kid, but he says to his mom at one point, I think, where he's like, I'm not a kid anymore. She says, enjoy your last summer as a kid. Like he aged out of being a kid when he had to take over as like this one of the strongest beings on the planet. He's stepping up into Omni-Man's role of like a protector of Earth. So I think he considers that behind him, but they show that like it's still in him. It's just he's trying to move on from it, but he still is an 18-year-old, a 17-year-old. You know, he's 18.
Yeah, and
Graduate high school.
Yeah, he just graduated, which is nice because in the comics he was in school a little bit longer, and we kind of passed all of that, which I appreciate. I think it kind of helps move, and we can get into the superhero stuff. But even with that said, like he's still young, he's still learning, and it was very evident of that in like this. What was the city called? The
Midnight City.
Yeah, Midnight City. Like at first, Darkwing is handing it to him. You know, home field advantage. He knows like his way around. Like he's experienced here, so he at the time has the upper hand on Mark.
And it's new tech to the Shadowverse, so it's not like anyone has details on it to prepare for it.
So it took Invincible a little while to like kind of figure out what's going on, where and who he was fighting, you know. But then he like snapped, you know, and like, oh shoot, now he knows he's the most powerful person right here.
Yeah.
At this moment, right here, he's recentered himself. He's gathered himself, and he's now in charge. Yeah. And then they have this dialogue. The dialogue between them was so good, where he was talking about how his dad like Darkwing was talking about how Omni-Man was destroying the world and like how bad of a person, like he's here trying to save people, but he was doing it in a wrong way as well. And then they get trapped in the Shadowverse, that they call it. And it's basically just this void of nothingness.
But there's like a rumbling of creatures off in the Shadowverse.
Yeah. And
mysterious.
And Invincible like finally catches Darkwing's like, look, you gotta get me out of here. Like, I'll let you go. Like, as soon as you bring me out, blah, blah, blah. And then he says this like really cool line of where, oh, like you wouldn't, Darkwing's like, you wouldn't hurt me. You wouldn't do that. Like, you're not your father. And he's like, I am my father, or I am my father's son. You know, like
father's son.
You don't know what I'm capable of.
You don't know what I'm capable of, dude.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I was like, let's go.
Dude, how terrifying would that be? To be trapped in there with those monsters. I mean, especially if you're not.
But he was so calm in that moment, which I think is cool. Like
Nerves of steel.
Yeah, we're seeing him we're seeing spurts of him.
Yeah.
You know, like coming into his own. But then we see a lot of like he's still learning. Like even in the first episode where he's getting beat up by the Mauler twins and company, you know, like he got his ass kicked.
Yeah.
You know, but he's still like developing, and the moments where he like has his confidence. They hit so hard because they let him get beat up.
And it takes confidence to do it, but I think a big part of what he was doing with Darkwing was an act to intimidate, you know? Maybe putting on more of a brave face than he even felt. Because you've got to think about how he's in the Shadowverse where it's literally emptiness and a void, the natural fear of not knowing what's going on around you, just darkness. And then these monsters could be so powerful, so huge, you have no idea, you can't see a thing. So the nerves of steel it takes to even put on that front, to gamble with him there and not be like begging him to let him go. Like he is definitely one cold MFer, dude. Like that's
yeah, it was so cool. And this whole scene was like 8 minutes? It was a pretty short piece of this episode. There was a lot of other things that happened. But it was definitely my favorite part.
Yeah, the episodes are like 15 minutes long. Are we missing any segments of what happened in this episode? I know that there's a lot, I think, involved with like him and his friends, kind of like
and his mom.
Them graduate when they're graduating. He's fighting Doc Seismic in the beginning.
Yeah,
Doc Seismic was kind of kicking his ass for a minute there.
He was, but that shot where he came up through the building and
through the
uppercut him, he redeemed himself in a pretty cool way. And then he's like, I can pull it back out if you want me to. And it's like, no. Cecil's like, no, you're just going to mess it up further.
Yeah, I think they're really highlighting like the consequences that he's missing his college graduation. He's seeing other kids go high school. He's seeing other kids go out to, what was it, Burger Mart. He's like, so he's having to sacrifice. And I think the sacrifice is helping alleviate his guilt. So I think he sees it as a necessary sacrifice. We see him comfort his mom. We see issues with Eve and her parents.
I was just going to say that the part that we haven't really touched on too much that was a big part of the episode was Adam's Eve kind of relationship and dynamic with her parents. You know, we got the Adam Eve special that came out, so we kind of got to see her background and how rocky her relationship is with her parents, which we also saw in the first episode, but we got kind of why that's there in that special that was released. And there was a lot more tension, you know, that was shown in this episode.
I think her dad resents her. He feels insecure because she's like in a way more than human and she's special. And I think he resents her because he doesn't feel powerful. He doesn't feel special himself.
Yeah, he's insecure in his own abilities, you know, to be the protector, to be the father figure, to be the provider.
Refusing to take help from her because he has too much, like a Walter White amount of too much pride. Like your daughter, who you raised and put a roof over her head and fed her, like you've done a service to her and now she's doing a service to you, trying to help you be able to pay your bills. And she can do it at the wave of a hand, and you're refusing out of stubborn pride.
She didn't work for it. She didn't earn it.
Yeah.
We earn things in this household.
Yeah. I mean, hey, she has a get rich quick scheme that works. Like,
or even just like live comfortably.
Yeah,
you know, and just be a happy family. Like
she just wants to take care of them. All she does is fill she fills the fridge with food, and her mom says, "No, take it back." That's ridiculous.
Yeah,
you guys need to have food.
Yeah,
stubborn to the point of like suffering. It just doesn't make sense. I think.
Yeah. What else happened with Adam, Eve, and her. Did we see anything else with them?
She talked about refusing. Oh yeah, that was important. So she talked about refusing to do superhero stuff, and instead she was going to go help in Chicago. Rebuilding the city after the destruction. She built that playground that turned out to be on a sinkhole, and it crashed. Luckily, nobody was hurt.
Yeah.
So it kind of shows like, yes, she's very well intentioned, and so is Mark. But just like Mark in the first episode with the Maulers and Anton Levy, they're 18. You know? They don't have all the details. They're not perfect.
Great writing. You know, like to have consequences to just a simple, wholehearted, good action.
And I never thought that was going to come back to bite her for a second when she was doing it. I was like, what a wonderful thing for her to do in the community. Like they're building you up.
There was a reason that nothing was there, you know, and like you said, like she's just an 18-year-old. She doesn't know. She didn't think of the consequences of just helping people.
And when she's more experienced, she can interact with those professionals and do the same thing, but safely, you know, like when she has the mindset and the knowledge and the know-how of how to go about it that way, she can still be just as effective putting up parks and feeding people. It's just maybe she needs some more.
It doesn't happen all the time, but when people work together, you can accomplish more.
Yeah.
Like it's just how it is, but
use her to the fullest extent of her ability. She is like one of the most powerful people in this world, in the entire universe of Invincible.
Yeah. Okay. I'm really glad that you remembered that point. I knew there was something that we were missing about her, but then kind of moving on to.
We also got what's his name? Immortal. He's in a relationship with Duplicate now.
Oh yes.
Rexplode is furious. Was Immortal brought in to lead the team in this episode, or was that in the last episode?
I want to say it was the last episode.
But we see him like battering them with the training in this episode.
Yeah. And then we also got introduced a little bit further to Shapesmith.
Yes. His power.
Man, so much happened in this episode.
Yeah. They get a lot done. They're building forward, you know, a lot. We only have 2 more episodes till the break.
Yeah.
But Shapesmith is really cool. I think that it's funny the way that he talks. He's like eating a frozen pizza right out of the box in front of people. Like, he's so
it's like, I'm a normal human from Earth.
I was born here on Earth.
Here to help people on Earth.
A scientific accident gave me my powers. He's like so generic. Which
is what a lot of superhero movies and shows do, right? That's
it's
just like
fun at it.
Yeah, like I fell in a tub of
radioactive waste. Yeah. But he's really cool. He's getting his toes wet, or his feet wet with toes. He's getting his feet wet with the Guardians a little bit, like wanting to join the Guardians of the Globe. So it's also building up towards the Sequid encounter, because we saw.
I was just gonna say, who is he? Where did he come from? For those that don't remember.
So the Shapesmith is a Martian who escaped Mars. He joined onto the rocket that they escaped with in season 1, and he came back and took the place of the astronaut who was living there. He's like assuming his life. That's why he's like getting fired from his job and can't pay his bills, because he doesn't know how to be an astronaut. But that astronaut actually remained on Mars, and with like a human host, or a non-Martian host, a mind that's like non-malleable, body that's non-malleable, can those Sequids like take a hold of the host. That's why they are slaves on Mars to the Martians, because the Martians can't be controlled because of their the like fluid nature of their their anatomy. So like a human host, once they get a hold of one of them, they've got this powerful hive mind, and now the Sequids have taken over Mars, and they look like they're on a march for Earth, which is where we're going to collide the Shapesmith with the Sequids and get a big Sequid, kind of, maybe not super big in the show, but we have an interesting Sequid arc in the comics that we can encounter. That's obvious to build towards. That's not a spoiler.
Yeah.
You can see
it's happening. Something's happening. It's just we know season 1 how it goes. Yeah. And then probably the last part, something that happens kind of towards the end, is that big fight in the fish world where Mark loses his virginity to a fish.
He doesn't really. He says to her, I have a girlfriend. I think it's so funny. Like
it wouldn't be right. Like
there's like big world stakes and like the entire civilization of Atlantis. But then Mark being like, hey, like I'm a newly graduated high school student and I have like a girlfriend that I care about. Like it's so funny, like the personal nature for him. And he's like Superman, these world ending like issues that he's dealing with. But I thought that the episode was overall really good. Like you said, it fit in a lot. There's one more spoiler territory thing that I wanted to talk to you about before. Do you have anything else you want to talk about before spoilers?
No, I mean, this episode definitely is setting up a lot. It's a setup episode. I wouldn't say it's
For a
filler.
punchline about duct
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So it was a good episode. I think the first one was a stronger episode.
Dude, what about Mark bringing Amber, like flying her to get lunch, and then he's like, I could bring you to Europe, but your skin would rip off. She's like, thanks for protecting my skin. That's so great. It like highlights his power. Like he in the 30-minute lunch break, he could get her to Europe and back, but it would kill her.
They also did another like little make fun of other superhero things where he jumps off and he's like, "You're too good for me,"
and then he comes back,
and then he comes back. He's like, "I gotta fly you home."
like, how's she gonna get off this skyscraper?
It was like, I don't know about you, but didn't you think like
he wasn't gonna come?
Yeah, it was like, okay, well, how'd she get down?
Yeah,
and then he's like, I'll take you home now. It was good.
I think it's cool. We're building up the relationship with him and Cecil. We're building up a lot of sub conflicts. You know, they brought back a lot of members of the Guardians of the Globe, which is something I've been hinting at for a long time. Is that most members of the Guardians of the Globe that died can come back in some form or another. There's a whole species of Atlanteans. There's a whole species of Martians, Immortals back. So Darkwing's back. So we get a lot. Of that is going on. But there's one thing in particular that I want to talk about, which is Debbie's meeting with Donald. I won't explain until after we.
So from this point forward, we're going to wrap it up here soon. But from this point forward, if you haven't read the comics and you don't want to know like spoilers or what's happening, come back later. Hit subscribe. Come back after you've read the comics,
or seen the rest of the season,
seen the rest of the season. Thanks for watching. Again, we're post every Monday and Tuesday. Let us know down in the comments what your favorite part of this episode was. And now we're getting into spoiler territory. So you have been warned.
The last thing I wanted to talk to you about was Cecil and Donald, right?
Yes.
So, like Donald is Cecil Stedman's like second right-hand man. And we saw him die in the season finale or the penultimate episode of season 1, where Omni-Man comes up behind him, just grabs him and grips his spine. And in a heroic sacrifice, Donald tries to blow up the building, which, come on, man. It's I guess he was like, didn't want his spine ripped out either, but it didn't do anything to Omni-Man. So two things. One that I want to talk about is how crazy is it that every time they look out their front window, they have a reminder of like the worst day of their lives, because there's still that destruction of that building in front of their house, that house. I'm like, come on, can't the GDA build a new house there just so that they can forget about that for a moment? Like,
not only is it a reminder to them, it's a reminder to everyone around them that like, oh, that's where Nolan or Mark's dad died, because that's like his like cover up that
he died in the gas explosion.
Right.
But I think that's so crazy. They need to put something up there, because I'm just looking at it like, man, I'd be always thinking about
Adam Eve, come on, what are you doing?
I can't call it. It wouldn't be up to code. It would fall apart. But the other thing is that when Debbie comes down to the GDA to talk with Cecil, she sees Donald come down the stairs, and she has this surprised reaction.
She's confused, yeah.
Because Donald died. We know why, which we'll say now if you read the comics.
Spoilers.
Is because Donald was reincarnated as a cyborg. Basically with like we've seen the insane level of technology that the GDA has, like when they come in to try and revive all the members of the Guardians of the Globe, and we've seen them like bring people back with crazy injuries.
I mean, Cecil can teleport because of this technology.
We've seen them revive Mark from near death. So Donald is like an android. Like they revived what they could from him, and the rest of his body is like robotic. So we see him like fight in the comics against like big threats later on. Well, as part of like, there's like an army at one point fighting another.
It seems like he doesn't fully know.
He doesn't know. That's what I wanted to talk to you about, how interesting that is. Cause he's like, sir, Debbie seems surprised to see me, because he is not aware that he was brought back as a cyborg. He seems to have his memory of the incident like wiped, or he does, or
do you think he knows that he's a cyborg?
I don't think so. I think he thinks he's a normal human right now, and we'll see it later in the season that his arm can turn into like a cannon. His chest is can turn into
like Iron Man.
Yeah, he's literally like Iron Man if Iron Man was the robot. So he's quite a bit stronger now, and I think Cecil's it's like Mercy. Mercy is Lex Luthor's like protector, and she's like an android. So I think we'll get to see him like come to that realization later in the season, maybe come into grips with that a little bit too. He probably won't have a huge arc because it's like he's just Donald. But,
come on, don't say it like that. He's not just Donald, he's Donald.
He's not Mark.
Come on.
But I think we'll see an arc with that. I thought it was really interesting that was put in this episode, because when I was sitting on the couch with them watching the first episode, they were like, "What? How is Donald alive?"
So do you really want me to tell you?
Yeah. So
do you really want to know? The answer is no. No spoilers.
So now people are going to have that question answered eventually watching the show who aren't watching this now because of spoilers. But I'm sure they've been curious themselves as to, hold on a second, did he die in the first season?
Yeah.
So, and they kind of just didn't acknowledge it until the whole first episode until now. He was in the first episode.
Right. I want to ask you a question. First season, we were just introduced to all these characters. We hadn't read the comics. I didn't even know about the comics. We obviously enjoyed the first season so much, and we couldn't stop thinking about it. And we both dove into the comics and read all 144 issues of it. But now season 2's here and we have all of this information. How is watching season 2 in comparison to season 1 now that you have all of the source material knowledge?
I would honestly say it's loads more enjoyable. Like, everything's in a sense spoiled for me. I feel like I've heard people say, it's not really spoiled for me though, because I experienced it in the comics. You watching the show is spoiling the comics for you in the opposite direction. So like, I don't feel like it's spoiled as like a negative connotation. I feel it's like I'm seeing it, what it was in my mind, transported from like my mind to the screen.
Yeah.
We're imagining what happened in between the panels, and they're doing just such a lovely job of developing it. So for me, it's elevated it to like 11. Like, what about you?
I think my excitement is definitely much bigger watching season 2, and my like anticipation for each episode, is really high, especially because I binged the first season all in like one 12-hour period. I watched it so fast because I didn't watch it when it first came out, and this one I'm having to watch it slow, episode by episode. The first episode was amazing, like having everything come together, and it's like, I know this
It's
is
back.
fantastic. I think the second episode I felt I want more.
Yeah.
Like it.
Like, you're like, I've already seen this.
Like, this is interesting, but like, can we flip a few
Yeah.
pages ahead?
I
Like,
got a few pages ahead in the end. Something we haven't talked about yet is your favorite character came back in the after credit scene. You saw Anton Levy?
oh yes,
He came back
Yeah.
he came
did.
back and was interacting with Mark in a different universe where he was chained, in a universe where Omni-Man had been killed.
Mm-hmm.
So we're seeing him explore and researching different Mark Graysons and building something. We're in the spoiler territory now. So
Yeah, he has a
team.
a vendetta out for Invincible now.
Make him pay for what he did
Yeah.
to your world.
Yeah, he has such good line delivery. I'm so excited to see him like face our Invincible more. But yeah, I feel like in episode 2, because I've read the comics, I was like, okay, come on, let's get to the next part. Like let's see something cool again. So I think maybe I don't have as much patience.
Well, they're built. I think
As I did.
For me, right now, they're building up the Lizard League. So I think we're
Yeah.
going to see like the part where we're in spoilers again. So that is so many times. Where we're going to see the part where Rex Splode dies, and I can finally stop being confused about saying Rex and Rex Splode.
Yeah.
'Cause Rudy takes the name of Rex in the comics.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so confusing to me to like call him Rudy, because to me he's Rex.
Yeah.
But I think that we'll get to see that relatively soon before the mid-season break, because that they go after like a nuclear plant or something.
Yeah.
And then the Guardians get responded to it, and Rex has this like heroic sacrifice, which is like a big character arc moment for him. I was like, man, I just started to like you right when you died. And it's such a cool moment in the comics where like he sacrifices himself and saves the day.
Yeah.
So he gets to do something badass. And I hope we get to see that, because they showed so much of the Lizard League.
Yeah.
That has to be for that.
I know it's so good. Talking about this episode makes me like it more, because we're like going into all the details of it. We're seeing how it related to the comics. So like
Marco against
my experience
Cecil,
reading like is coming back, and I'm looking back on my memories of reading the comics and how much fun I was having, so like talking about it has definitely made me like the episode more. But while I'm watching it, I definitely felt like I'm just excited to get to the good part. I want to see something brutal again.
Like, we're just seeing tethers of Mark disobeying Cecil. I want to see Mark versus Cecil. Like, that part.
I saw like a top 5 ranking of like the strongest characters in Invincible, and like number 1 they put Invincible, and I was like, yes.
Hey.
But like literally everyone who's just seen the show probably has him like way down here because he just hasn't developed into the Invincible that we know.
Yeah.
So I'm just excited to get to that part, but I do appreciate that they're taking their time to get there. It makes it way more worth it in the end run. in the long run.
Absolutely. We will get there eventually, but for now, we definitely want to thank everybody that listened to this episode with us. We have so much fun talking about this show. Please make sure to like, subscribe, follow on whatever platform you're on. We're on everything: Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook. We are everywhere. We're on Spotify. Make sure to share us with friends and family to grow the show.
Comment down below, too, of what your favorite part of this episode was.
Absolutely. And thank you again for listening. We'll see you next time. And
That's a wrap.